My review of Warhammer Enemy in Shadows today on Dungeon Craft. Welcome to Dungeon Craft. I'm Professor Dungeonmaster, and this channel is about playing the ultimate game of D&D and other role-playing games.
And I'm Deathbringer. Subscribe and click the bell icon for more Dungeon Craft.
Enemy in Shadows from Cubicle 7 is the first in a series of director's cut reprints of the classic Enemy Within campaign for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. The Enemy Within originally appeared in the mid-80s, shortly after the publication of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. And more than anything, more than even the system itself, it really shaped people's perception of the game as a grim and gritty alternative to D&D. 2 years ago at Gen Con, I bumped into Graham Davis, one of the editors of the original Enemy Within, and we chatted about his vision for a director's cut of Warhammer, and I thought, yeah, that might happen one day. Well, I'm pleased to say that day has come, and I'm going to be reviewing it today. So the first part of this video, I'm going to walk you through it, then I'm going to give you my conclusions. Let's check it out. Here's the Enemy in Shadows, hardbound, 159 pages from Cubicle 7. And we have a great map of the old world, some terrific interior artwork, table of contents, forward by editor Graham Davis, and an introduction which pretty much lays out the entire campaign and the overall overarching plot of what's going on, where the player characters are going to be mistaken for a member of the Purple Hand cult, which is a chaos death cult. One of the best features is these grognard boxes. This is for people who've already played it. They include ways that you can switch up key scenes so your players, even if they've played it back in the 80s or 90s, you can surprise them. How to run the campaign, I really appreciate this. How to tailor the campaign so it is your own. They get into the campaign themes, the enemy within, the idea that the real monsters are not external, but they are lurking beneath the surface of society. The first chapter, Wanted Bold Adventurers, describes a coaching inn where the player characters are going to meet and have encounters with a number of NPCs, and they will collect a number of rumors. And in this way, they will learn about the world. Instead of with an info dump, they will learn about it through experiencing it. Some of the interesting characters include the innkeeper, the coachman who are driving the coach that is just pulled in, a scheming gambler, Philippe Descartes, who will probably shoot at them and escape to plague them in future adventures, as well as the Lady Isolde, who is a very spoiled noblewoman with a huge collection of hats, so she insists the characters ride on the outside of her coach because she can't fit them in the inside because of the hat collection. These characters are broadly drawn and great for a game master that enjoys hamming it up and role play. Lady Isolde is really obnoxious, and Descartes is super flamboyant and over the top. They're a lot of fun to play. The second chapter, Mistaken Identity, is where the scenario really begins. The characters find their way blocked by an overturned coach that is being besieged by mutants, and they've killed everybody on board and they're in the process of eating them. This is, again, a great way for the player characters to experience the Warhammer world. Rather than an info dump where you tell them about it, they see that chaos has the ability to warp human flesh and turn human beings into monsters. The grognard option includes switching the monsters or having them just be outlaws instead. Among the corpses is a non-player character who looks exactly like one of the player characters, and he's got documents with him that identifies him as one Castor Liberung, and he's on the way to Altdorf to check in with his lawyers because he's going to inherit a large estate. This is enough to get the player characters to try to impersonate Castor Liberung to inherit his money. And this is going to lead to lots of hijinks because Castor Liberung is really a member of the Purple Hand, and the inheritance is all a made-up story. Throughout the rest of the story, members of the Purple Hand are going to try to contact the character believing that they're Castor Liberung, but they can only do it through hand gestures and secret signals that the player characters do not know, leading to mass confusion. There's also another cult, the Red Crown, that wants to kill the members of the Purple Hand, including Castor Liberung. So it's got a very Alfred Hitchcock, North by Northwest kind of feel, where the player characters are these really average people who are in completely over their heads, and there are different factions trying to kill them, and they don't know why. The illustrations are particularly outstanding. I think even better than the Warhammer rulebook. They are a combination of the beautiful and the grotesque. Even back in the day, there was always more character to the Warhammer art than the standard TSR art, and it's still the same today. The next scenario, in my opinion, a classic, is Shadows over Bogenhofen. It starts out with the player characters finding out the inheritance is all fake and they're not going to inherit anything. Then they go to the Schaffenfest, which is essentially a Ren fair. Schaffenfest, I believe it translates to Sheep Festival. And the characters can walk around and participate in archery and axe throwing and take a turn in the wrestling ring with Crusher Braugen. In an amusing section, they bail out this drunken dwarf who's been arrested for vagrancy, and he kind of gloms onto them and becomes their drunken best friend. Then they attend Dr. Malthusius' Zoocopia, which is a freak show where they see a three-legged goblin and it bites its handler and escapes. They catch the goblin, return it to Dr. Malthusius, and then later on they find out the goblin escaped again by crawling down a sewer grate in the wall of the town of Bogenhofen, the Schaffenfest taking place just outside. Dr. Malthusius offers to hire the player characters to get the goblin back, and the local magistrate issues a warrant that the player characters are deputized to go into the sewers and search for this goblin. In the sewers, the characters enter a dark, stinky, very mysterious world where they can encounter members of a thieves guild. The characters find the body of the goblin in a hidden temple, and it's torn limb from limb, and there are a number of other clues strewn about. And after a few rounds, a greater demon, a guardian demon, rather, manifests itself in the center of this pentacle, and the characters are probably going to run away. This is a very grounded world. At this point, we haven't seen anything like a demon, and most people don't believe they exist. So the player characters, upon getting out and going back to the magistrate, find themselves in the center of a vast conspiracy. No one believes there is a demon in the sewers, and if the player characters return there, they're going to find that the evil temple has been packed up and scrubbed. This begins an investigation where the characters have to peel layer by layer of this mystery back, find out who is involved and why. This is an adaptation of the Dr. Faustus myth, where an academic in a library discovers the secret to summoning a demon and exchanges his soul in exchange for material wealth. In the Faust myth, the term is 24 years. In this, it's 7, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't know if I'd sell my soul for just 7 years of happiness. Now there's an escape clause. The Mephistopheles demon, who's named Gideon here, offers the merchant a way out of his contract if he sacrifices 7 other souls in exchange for his. The other merchants involved in the cult don't actually know that they're worshiping a demon. They just think it's a prosperity cult that will help their merchant houses grow. Meanwhile, the demon is completely lying to the head cultist. The ritual will actually open a gate to hell through which a bunch of demons can take over the world, or at least this immediate vicinity of it. The adventure is a slow burn with mounting dread, as the shape-shifting demon constantly thwarts the player characters, at one point disguising itself as them and setting fire to a good chunk of the city. At one point, the characters round a corner to find themselves staring at an exact duplicate of themselves holding a torch, followed swiftly by an angry mob of pitchfork-wielding citizens intent on killing them. It's got a very 70s horror film vibe, like Wicker Man and Rosemary's Baby, where everything seems fine, but beneath the surface, everyone's secretly out to get you in a vast conspiracy, and the supernatural elements are left off stage until the very end, which makes it all the more scary. On Dungeon Craft, I talk a lot about timers and time constraints and how important they are for building tension, and Bogenhofen has a great timer. As the ritual approaches, the moon gets fuller and fuller until it develops a demonic-looking face, and it looks like it's ready to devour the whole town. But only the player characters can see it. The rest of the people of Bogenhofen don't. They just go on their merry business, not believing in demons or anything supernatural. And that's what creates that great sense of dread and terror. The ending is a nail-biter, with the players racing to stop the cultists before they unwittingly open a gate to hell. It's been done a million times, but never this well, and provisions are made in the event the ritual actually succeeds. So the players are in total control. Epic ending, one of my all-time favorites. The book concludes with descriptions of the locations of Bogenhofen and outstanding-looking handouts, which are far too beautiful to be cut out of your book, so you'll need a color copier for that. But the story is great, the artwork is great, the layout is great. My only quibble is this particular original picture is still one of the scariest things I've ever seen, and it's so iconic, I would have liked to have seen an updated version of it. That aside, Enemy in Shadows is brilliant and as close to perfect as a scenario can get. Conclusions. I say this without a sense of hyperbole. This product, especially Shadows over Bogenhofen, is one of the best RPG products ever written. I've often described Warhammer as filet mignon compared to D&D's Big Mac. You've got allusions to Descartes and a mystery based on the Faust story. I mean, it's just at a higher literary level. It's not to everyone's taste, especially younger players. Like, I got a 16-year-old son who's into building power characters. For him, D&D, it's like the Avengers, really, and they're superheroes, whereas the Warhammer characters are more like the characters in Hot Fuzz. They're just kind of bumbling around, barely surviving. It's got that kind of vibe to it. One criticism of The Enemy Within is that it's a little railroady, but I don't think that's fair. I think it's more like a tree than a railroad, where you got the main trunk of the main plot, and then you got the branches where the player characters can branch off and go their own ways. And it's up to the game master to determine how it's resolved. So my final verdict on Enemy in Shadows is it is terrific. It is a must-buy. It is a textbook how to design an adventure, and I want to see more of this. I'm really looking forward to future episodes in this series. Special thanks to the patrons who made this video possible. $5 tier patrons get access to the extended version of this video where I give tips from my experience from running Shadows over Bogenhofen and The Enemy Within. But all my patrons get access to my PDF Warhammer to D&D conversion chart. Once again for Dungeon Craft, I'm Professor Dungeonmaster. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you soon. And until then, may all your rolls be 20s.
Deathbringer again. Click on these videos for more Professor Dungeonmaster advice and reviews. He's just like Ginny D, without all of the singing, talent, or likability. Anyway, watch more Dungeon Craft.